of this session and make the best of it. I now invite Mr. Dominic Kamau, Mwangi. A warm welcome to you, Mr. Dominic. And I also thank you for taking your valuable time out to be with us during this session. So please welcome and take over this session.
I hope my audio is clear. Thank you so much, Sister Wilma, for that warm welcome. And I hope you can at least see me and hear me. So, karibuni sana to this session. I think I've had some sessions with a few of you. Tell me in the chat section kindly if you have been, just type in yes, if you have been in more than one session so far with me. Tell me in the chat section if you have been in more than one session so far with me in this series that I've been having as St. Jude's. Oh, okay. So, all right. So a good number of you would be hearing this again, possibly. Oh, it's a good number of yeses, huh? One session. All right. Okay. So there's a number of you who have been in this session with me. Okay. Now, how many of you, so the sign that your child has turned into an adolescent, is that your son has had his first wet dream and your daughter has had her first menstrual cycle. How many of us, let me see, just roughly speaking, if your son or daughter has already started this, kindly type in ndio, la, yes or no, huh? Just so that we can figure out whether I'm speaking to parents of adolescents or adolescents to be. Okay. All right. So there is a yes, there are no, there is ndio, there is yes and there is no. Okay. So because when I wanted to give this this talk, I wasn't very sure if a number of you are either parents of adolescents. So a number of you are not parents of adolescents. Your children are still in the middle childhood, which is before puberty. But I am thinking still that the best way is to focus this workshop on adolescents because your children are heading there, isn't it? Because instead of speaking about middle childhood and they are almost finishing that stage, I will focus more on adolescents, yeah? And then as they become adolescents, you can see the psychological changes that are happening and accompany them better. I hope that is agreeable. I hope that's agreeable because I can see a number of you are parents of adolescents and a number of you are not parents of adolescents. So again, so my name is Dominic. I'm a lecturer in psychology and I want to take you through a very quick crash course on the psychological development of adolescents. Please take notes if you want. And of course, there is a recording which will be shared with you after by the school. All right. So physical changes. So adolescence, as I've told you, starts when estrogen starts pouring into the bloodstream. And they are very, very huge changes, by the way. And those signal the first menarche, as we call it, or the first menstrual period, which can start as early as 9 years, by the way. And in some cases, even earlier than that. And then we have what we call spermachy, or first ejaculation, or a wet dream. And it is not, I've said that 3 times, associated with sex dreams, okay? It is simply a biological process where a boy or a man emits excess sperm. This whole idea that wet dreams is about a boy or a man dreaming about sex is is a falsehood that has been so much around that it has been associated with that. Okay, it's simply a biological process where the testicles emit excess sperm. Okay, it's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. Whether or not it's accompanied by a wet dream, it is not primarily caused by. By a dream about sex is not. It is not primarily caused by that. And the reason I have said this is because I remember giving this talk to University of Nairobi students, and one student said, "Thank you for saying that because our pastor has been praying for us because we have wet dreams, and he says they're very, very sinful to have." Okay, so lack of this biological knowledge sometimes can cause unnecessary guilt, as far as I can tell. So these are some of the changes that we see happening in our boys and girls. So for girls, there's acne appears. Armpit hair grows, breasts develop, uterus grows bigger, menarche, pubic hair and body shape rounds. Of course, as you can see, Women get, hips, the pelvic, because of the pelvic bone enlarging to accommodate the head of the child in case of a pregnancy. And then a hairline recedes for men. Acne appears also, facial hair grows, larynx, so that the voice gets deeper. Armpit hair grows, pubic hair grows, and penis, prostate, and seminal vesicles grow bigger in increment to muscles also develop. I'm going to move fast as I can cover as much ground as I can before my 1 hour is over. I suspect that I should be finishing by 12:50, I hope. So physical growth. So there's a growth spurt for girls. It starts around age 8 to 13 and boys age 10 to 16. And what you might see here is your girl, your younger daughter might grow faster or might even look bigger than your older son before his age of 10 to 16. And then after some time, the boy comes and shoots, grows very fast and quickly. So that happens. Now, I want to focus on early development and the reactions to that. So what happens when your 8-year-old girl already has big buttocks, big breasts, she's all big. What happens? So they get unwanted attention and teasing, especially if they're not well affirmed by their parents. And this has been shown to have an increased risk for depression, eating disorders, and early sexual activity, in addition to substance abuse. So we call this precocious puberty. That precocious puberty, when it starts earlier than usual, it is generally leads to a number of these early sexual debut, among other issues. And we know that precocious puberty, especially among girls, is related to one, nutrition, how much calories they're eating, so obesity and that. So that one is also nutrition. Better nutrition has lowered the age of puberty, especially for girls. And number two, the other one is stress. So earlier menstrual cycle or earlier menstrual period for girls is strongly related also to whether they're experiencing a lot of stress and anxiety and how painful they are. And this is related across the age of women. So earlier menstrual cycles can be related to high levels of anxiety and depression. So as one of the factors, not the only factor, by the way, just to clarify. So, and then of course, it has been observed, even though it's not very clear why, that girls who do not have fathers or who do not have a proper relationship with the father also tend to have earlier menstrual cycles. And that's why it is said early menstrual cycle often leads to early sexual activity. Not always, okay, but often. So boys, risks and benefits. So boys who mature faster may be more athletic, may be taller, and there is an increased risk for substance abuse and early sexual activity, okay? So this is what happens when there is early maturity. But now, what on the other side, late development or late bloomers, they have high risk of bullying if they're boys, depression and parental conflict. So boys who bloom late, that means their voice don't break, early enough, they still look small and all that, and they have a very high voice, as I've mentioned, they risk being bullied. So if your boy has not started their puberty early or the signs of puberty early, you want to affirm them more because they may be bullied by their colleagues. And if they're not well affirmed, they may end up being depressed because they don't see themselves developing as men, as their parents are, as their colleagues are, and that can lead to parental conflict. So on the other side, girls who develop late, there is a risk of teasing. Maybe, they still don't have breasts or anything like that, or any of the physical changes that accompany puberty, and they may also be bullied. But when it comes to girls, studies show that overall, there is more positive outcomes if they mature late than if they mature early, okay? On average, it is better for a girl to mature late than early, okay? Now, remember, I'm not saying every girl who matures late will be, will not have these problems, or every girl who matures early is going to, be a problem. No, that's not what I mean. But I'm saying on average, they see the risk seems to be higher. Now I'm going to move towards development of the brain, the brain development. Again, allow me to move a chapter so that I can try as much as I can to save on time. Now, brain development. So one of the organs that takes so long to develop is your brain. So the brain is the hardware. Okay, so like you can say, legs are the hardware. Walking is the software, is what they do. So the same thing, brain is the hardware. The mind is what the brain does. Okay, so brain development. Now, the brain as a hardware will finish growing around the age of 8 as a hardware. Okay, but as a software, it develops all the way until the age of 24, 25 years. And this is where I tell parents of adolescents that when you are so angry with your adolescents and you tell them, wewe hauna akili, you are actually psychologically, you are right, hana akili. And so your anger may be directed to a person who does not understand why you're so angry. They don't have the software yet to understand why you are so angry. And what they end up doing is keeping a distance among other emotional reactions. So now, right here in front of your brain, right here where I'm touching, if you can see me, I think I'm spotlighted, I guess. If I'm not, you can spotlight me. So that just right in front here, behind your head, behind your forehead, is that part of the brain called the prefrontal cortex. And it is involved, as you can see on the screen, on decision-making, risk assessment, long-term planning, and behavioral regulation, self-control. And it is under construction until the late teenage years, 18, 19 years. Okay, now, so the prefrontal cortex is like the bricks, okay? It's like the bricks, okay? And your adolescents do not have this yet well developed, okay? Now, what do they have? They have the limbic system, the accelerator. So think of it. The prefrontal cortex, think like a car. The prefrontal cortex are the brakes. The limbic system is the accelerator, and it is very well developed. Okay, so the accelerator is very well developed, but the brakes are not. What do you think will happen? So the accelerator works on a fuel called dopamine. Dopamine. It's a feel-good hormone. It is what you feel when you have watched a nice movie and you've enjoyed. It is what you feel when you have had sex. You know, it is produced. It is what you feel when you do drugs. It is what is produced, and that's why we get addicted because of this. Now, for adolescents, they are producing a lot of dopamine. Okay, dopamine is the fuel for the accelerator, but they have very little brakes. Biologically, psychologically, And so what that will mean is they will be involved in pleasure-seeking activities. Sitting in front of a screen for 5 hours, it's very pleasurable. But what about the homework? That is the bricks. The bricks are not there. What about watching pornography? It feels good. What about doing drugs? It feels good. What about just watching a movie all the time? It feels good. So they tend to work on a pleasure principle. Okay, and they tend to take risky behaviors so that they can release. So the dopamine is pushing them towards pleasurable and risky behaviors, but also dopamine is being produced when they engage in those. So there's that cycle, and that's why addiction happens at the highest when people are below 24 years. And that's why even some marriage therapists will tell people, don't get married before 25 years. They will tell them this. Why? Because your brain has not developed, and the person you are after 25 years is really, really different from the person you are before 25 years. You really change after your brain has completely developed and is able to, think through. Okay. Now, so pleasure-seeking, risk-taking behavior. So now, therefore, they are prone to addiction, screen, sex, pornography, drugs. And so, and they are not producing a lot of this hormone that works with the brakes. So this is the brake fluid, to think in terms of a car. This is a brake fluid. It helps you, it calms risky behaviors, extreme behaviors. And people who do not produce enough brake fluid, this serotonin, are some of the most violent people that you can meet. And usually it is, so if you have people you see that are very violent, it's sometimes because they have low serotonin production. And so adolescents can tend to have mood swings. Okay, they are they can be oversensitive and very irritable, very irritable. And if you have an adolescent, tell me in the chat section, have you already started seeing some of these signs? If you have an adolescent, if you have already started the menstrual cycle, tell me in the chat section, have you already started seeing these mood swings? Sometimes they're very happy, and then 2-3 seconds down, does not want to talk, just want to remain in the room. Have you seen some of these things already? So they can be the energy in the home, very, very happy. They're the one who are, making you happy and all that, but then suddenly they don't want to talk. So you can already see, they can be oversensitive, okay? And they can be irritable, easily annoyed. And so what I want to mention to you is, it is not that your adolescent is being rude and difficult and just a horrible person. The biological changes that are happening within them are in a huge way their responsibility, okay? And that is very, very important for you to understand. The reason I'm saying this is you need to be patient with them. Otherwise, you can create a huge distance between you and your adolescent as you lay down the law, but for them, they don't have the capacity to process why you're punishing them. And then they just become distant from you. So, but just to be clear, most adolescents will go through adolescence peacefully, okay? They will go through adolescence peacefully. And adolescents, sorry, I don't know why I've not corrected this. Adolescents do need, kindly allow me to, there's someone at the door, just give me a minute, sorry for this. Okay, sorry for that. Thank you for your patience. So they do need and want adult guidance, even though they may act like they don't. So that's something that you see with adolescents. They don't want, they will act as if they don't need you, but they do. Okay. And one of the things that you will see with adolescents is those adolescents who need love the most act in the most unloving ways. Okay, let me repeat that. The adolescents who need love the most act in the most unloving ways. And so you want to observe that, especially middle children. Middle children can seem lost, okay, because there's an older person who is, who is somehow often seen as a good example for every other child. And then there's their children behind them who tend to have maybe greater affection and they are. So middle children can be a bit more difficult than the rest and they can be lost. So you need to pay attention to them, especially if after a child is born, and the child who was, there before starts wetting their bed, that's a good sign that they're having high levels of anxiety, okay? So they were not wetting their bed, and then you have a new child is born, and then the older child starts wetting their bed, okay? So that's a good sign that you might want to focus on them a little bit more because that's a sign of anxiety. So, or you move from one place to another and your child was not wetting their bed and they start wetting their bed. They're not just, they're not just immature or lazy or unfocused and indisciplined people who need to grow up. They're not just that. They are going through a lot of biological changes. So the changes in their body are natural, they are healthy, they are necessary, and they're expected. That behavior, those changes that you see making your adolescent want their space. Mom, dad, leave me alone. This is my space. Those changes are important. Those changes should be nurtured in a healthy manner, so that because what the brain is telling this person is, you need to grow up and be an adult and learn to occupy your own space and manage it. So you don't want to destroy that development. You don't want to destroy it. You want to nurture it in a way that is disciplined and healthy. Okay. So don't be too strong on it. Another sign of these biological changes that are happening in adolescence is, I don't know how many parents have already observed this, your adolescent does not want to be seen with you in public. Tell me yes, if you have seen this already. Tell me yes or no, if you have seen this already in your adolescent. They don't want to be seen with you in public. You used to go to church together. Now, mom, just go, dad, just go. We see, we'll find it, we'll see. Yeah. Tell me in the chat section if you have already observed this. Yes, no hugging too. Yeah, yes. So it's not like you're not a bad parent. Let me see in the chat section if you have experienced this, a sense of a distance with you in your adolescence. They can be comfortable with you in the house, very, very comfortable. They can be very, very playful. But the moment you're in public with them, they don't want the hugging and the pet names, calling them daddy, or, they want you to drop them 10 kilometers away from the school gate, or, the church. You go alone. Yes, I can see a lot of responses. So again, Again, understand these are psychological changes. And that's why I am very committed to taking psychology to the streets so that parents can understand what is happening in their children, and possibly they can accompany them better, and they don't, become too hard on them, so that you know what is happening. So a lot of yeses already. So yes, you have adolescents when you see this. So adolescents are not just impulsive and act without thinking. Again, it's very, very important. They do think. The problem is, since the accelerator is very, very poorly developed, they will exaggerate the positives, the advantages of the behavior, whatever they want to do, and really downgrade or de-emphasize the cons. So that an adolescent will come to you and tell them, I want to go out with my friends at night or whatever time it is. For them, they have lowered completely. They don't see the disadvantages of going there, and they have exaggerated the positives of whatever they want to do. And when as a parent you say no, they just see you as unfair, as a horrible person. Why? Because their mind is telling them there are so many advantages, and it has lowered the disadvantages, such that when you as an adult with your well-developed prefrontal cortex, you say no, they don't see it. Okay, so brain development continued here. One of the things they need to have is sleep. Sleep is very, very important for brain development. It's important for all of us, by the way. It's important. Very few of us need 6 hours and below. Sleep is genetic. So you want to just look at your family tree to know if you are a family of heavy sleepers or light sleepers. Now, one of the fights you will have with your adolescent is this. Melatonin is a sleep hormone. Melatonin is for us adults, we start producing melatonin around 8, 9, 10. Adolescents, on the other hand, start producing their melatonin around 10 p.m., 11 p.m. And this is the time you want them to sleep by 9. They are not sleepy. It's not that they are being stubborn. They're just not sleepy. It's just melatonin has not started being produced, and they cannot sleep without melatonin. Okay. Now, melatonin starts to be getting produced late in the evening, but it is still in the bloodstream at 6 a.m. when you want them to wake up. And that's when you're fighting. For you as an adult, you've already slept and melatonin has been reabsorbed from the bloodstream, so you are awake. For you, an adolescent, that's the time they want to sleep. And I get very concerned as a psychologist, especially in high schools, because I don't think the school system is able to understand that this is the biological system. It is not the fault of the children. So when they are forced to wake up at 5 and then they are burning schools and people are surprised, they're like, just read a little, So they need 9 to 10 hours of sleep. Need, not want, need. Okay. And deficit of sleep results to several problems. Okay. So this is the psychologically sound requirement of sleep across all ages. As you can see here, newborn 14 to 17, but let me just focus on 6 to 13. As you can see, 6 to 13, the dark blue is recommended, the recommended hours. Okay. So here, by the way, I see someone says very interesting on sleep. It is very, very possible the main conflict between you and your husband, between you and your wife, is that both of you or one of you is not sleeping enough, because lack of sleep is related with high irritability. Okay, so you can be very angry. So you're not sleeping enough. Your job is very demanding. Okay, so your stress is going up. You will fight. Okay, it is a very high chance that you'll be have high levels of conflict. So anyway, coming back to this week. So as you can see, between the ages of 6 to 13 years, 9 to 11. And teenage years, 8 to 10 hours, minimum 7 hours, minimum. So the light blue is what is appropriate, not recommended, just appropriate. Okay. So teenagers need to sleep. They need to sleep. And one of the biggest culprits that destroys their sleep, not only teenagers, but for all of us, technology. So in many instances, I always advise parents, 30 minutes to sleep time, 0 technology, a book, and a hardcover, and that, and that. Okay, so what happens when people don't sleep? So there's the one that most people think that will happen is sleepiness. So of course, you might be very sleepy during the day. You might find children who are very sleepy in class, in school, students in high school who are very, very sleepy. But it is not the only one. It's possible that you're not feeling sleepy, but other are there. Daydreaming, fantasizing, poor attention, poor memory, okay, happens, okay? And so imagine you're very angry at your student or your child for not doing very well in their exams. It's possible they're not remembering stuff because they're having insufficient sleep. And if you come from a family tree of heavy sleepers, that means your child needs even more sleep because genetically he is wired for more sleep, okay? So understand that. Again, look at this: stress, anxiety, and depression. Again, this is not limited to children. What I'm sharing with you is not limited to children, but particularly for children, suicidal ideation or suicidal thoughts have been found 3 times more among those who don't sleep sufficiently. So pay attention to this. Poor judgment and decision-making, risky behaviors. So children who do not sleep enough, people generally who don't sleep enough, they tend to have very poor judgment and poor decision-making and tend to engage in risky behaviors. And lack of motivation, just bored, poor self-control, okay, again, across all ages, and morning tiredness, and finally, obesity and its complication. So lack of sleep leads to obesity. Why? Because the hormone, a hormone called leptin that, tells the brain that you are full, because it is not the stomach that tells you you are full, it's the brain. It's not the stomach. So if the brain is triggered to make you feel full when you're completely hungry, you will not eat. And the opposite is true. So, a bad neuroscientist can make you eat to your death by simply playing with your brain, and you feel hungry and you keep eating and eating. Okay, so that hormone that tells you have had enough, the more you don't sleep enough, the more it's not produced, and so you're constantly eating junk food, constantly nibbling here and there. Okay, so you can see these results. You can see this already. Not only this is what's going to happen to your children if they don't sleep enough, but also in you. Okay, so let me just look at this poor judgment and decision making, and look at our high schools where children are not sleeping enough. What do you expect? What do you expect? Poor self-control. So you have boys who are by nature more aggressive, okay, not sleeping enough. So they have very poor self-control. And then you only need 3, 4, 5 boys to say, let's ban the dormitories, okay? They just ban, they're sleeping 5 hours, 6 hours. So anyway, what to do? Just to move, so moving on quickly, negative body image can happen at adolescence, and it can be associated with poor nutrition if you're not eating well, atypical eating patterns where they have irregular eating patterns, social media, so especially Instagram has been strongly associated with depression because of comparison, and lack of feedback from parental figures. When the parents don't give positive feedback to their children, okay, to their children. And then eating disorders, muscle dysmorphia, where you have your son obsessed with developing muscles to a point where he thinks he's not a man without muscles. Okay, so he's going around lifting everything. Oh, mom, let me carry that for you. I'm the man. Okay, so that's okay. That's normal for a boy. But when it becomes obsessive, okay, to a point where your son looks sad because he doesn't have muscles, then that's muscle dysmorphia, and that's a problem. Bulimia nervosa, again, eating and then throwing up. And then anorexia nervosa, not eating, especially a very low caloric intake. Binge eating disorder is different from bulimia nervosa. Binge eating is when you eat because you are stressed, okay? What people call stress eating, or you're depressed and you eat. So the way you deal is a maladaptive coping mechanism for dealing with stress and anxiety. And so your child eats every time he or she is sad. Sexual development, so body image, as I mentioned to you, is influenced by media portrayals. Masturbation can happen, especially among boys. Masturbation is very common. So as a parent, don't get shocked. My child is going to hell now. Oh my goodness, Shaitani amekuja na his relatives, okay? So it happens, especially among boys. So the balance is you don't want to condone it and you don't want to condemn it. So it's a sort of a balance. And there's a bit of sexual fascination, this age of sexual maturity. Sexting and phone calls may evoke sexual feelings. And one of the things that I usually advise parents is your child needs to know, insofar as you bought something, it belongs to you. So you don't need their permission to take that phone. You don't need permission to check what is on that phone, okay? That is should be very, very clear. And when you are giving technology, when you're giving children a phone, or when you promise that they will have a phone, don't attach it to age. Don't say, I will give you a phone when you turn 16. So what 16? What if we attach it to discipline, attach it to behavior and academic performance? Those two things are important, not to age. You might have a 13-year-old who is very mature and a 17-year-old who is not mature at all. Okay, so attach it to behavioral patterns. So at certain levels, if you are able, if I find that I come home and you have done your house chores, several things for, I will decide when. Not then I will give you. No, I will decide when, because you don't want them to say, but I do all the house chores now. Okay, no, you do. You be responsible until I'm satisfied. Then I will decide when. Okay, but when you put it to an age, then you will have a problem when you say no later. Okay, when that age happens. So technology, don't put it as part of the rewards of a birthday. No, overall, it's not a good thing. Technology, the earlier you give to a child, huh? It is not. So STIs are common to teenagers who are active, sexually active. And here, therefore, it is very, very important to have the courage to have conversations on sex, on its role and the goals of sex. And so these conversations are important within a proper moral framework by the parents. The reason I'm saying this is science has no role speaking about morality. And that is the biggest problem we are having today. Just like in ancient times where religion tried to speak on matters of science, okay? And I'm not saying they're opposed, but I'm saying each has its own discipline. Religion and culture, these are the areas of morality, not science. So whereas I can describe to you how homosexuality works, whereas I can describe to you how transgender works, as a scientist, I can only describe. I cannot then take the responsibility to tell you whether it's a moral good or bad. That is not the expertise of a scientist. Now, this is what is happening in many European countries where scientists are, because this is how it happens, therefore it is okay. No, I think those are very, very different areas of competence as far as I can tell, okay? So those conversations, they got to be there. They've got to be there, and don't be afraid to have them. And maybe some other time we can explore how to have conversations like that. But for now, let us go in this. Okay, so if you're following me, let me know if you're following me. What part of the adolescent brain is last to fully develop? 1, 2, 3, or 4? Tell me in the chat section as we move on chapter. Tell me which of these is the last to develop? Which of these? Tell me. 1, 2, 3, or 4? 1. Okay, very good. So the prefrontal cortex is the last to develop. Thank you so much for your participation. And we said these are the brakes. Okay, so when you see your teenager acting as if someone does not have brakes, they really don't have it. So your anger will not have an insufficient impact. Very good. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Lots of participation. So the limbic system is the emotional center in your brain. So even though we say our emotions are in our heart, and there is some biological basis for that, by the way, that the emotion, the heart can be seen as the center of emotion. So there is also a huge part of your brain that is dedicated to feeling. So let's talk about cognitive development. And here I want to speak about 3 things that affects adolescents, okay? There's a psychologist called David Elkind who says, adolescents have 3 things. 1, imaginary audience. So your teenager will behave as if his or her friends are continuously watching him. And therefore, when you give them a hug, you are embarrassing them, okay? So they have imaginary audience. They constantly think someone is watching them. Okay, so they are so careful. Even maybe teachers have observed this. They are less confident in answering questions in class than they were when they were in class 4. They constantly have that. They think someone is judging them, watching how they are dressing. So your son might leave his room very, very dirty, but when he comes out, he's smelling good. He's going to see my friends. Imaginary audience. Then personal fable. One of the reasons teenagers do not tell their parents how they are feeling is they tend to believe that their feelings are so unique that nobody can understand them. Okay. So when I go to speak to students in high school, after I sit down for them to come and talk to me one-on-one. And I find, why have you not shared this with your parents? Oh, my mom cannot understand I have had heartbreak. They see as if having, a relationship is something that their parents cannot understand. It's so unique to me. How can these older people of who were born when the dinosaurs were still walking in the world, how will they understand me? Okay, so personal fable, and then invincibility fable. So those three things you will see in your adolescence. Those consequences that affect other people, they don't affect me. People die, but not me. Huh? Hey, my son, hey, you should not go to that place because you can have an accident. Yeah, people die, but not me. So you find teenagers doing a lot of risky behaviors, and no wonder adolescent age is the age where most people get injuries, by the way. Even yourself, you look at your own body, and maybe you can trace some of your accidents when you are a teenager, when you are an adolescent, between the ages of maybe 9, 10 to 19, okay? Most of maybe some of your injuries happen there because those consequences that your parents were warning you about, climbing the tree and all that, and that you're going to fall, you didn't think that they can apply to you, okay? Okay, so let's go on. So this is something that I've already mentioned to you, that they weigh rewards and consequence of action, but they still do what is risky to get gangster points, And as I mentioned to you, most injuries and fatalities also occur during adolescence. So they may start to doubt traditional moral norms, start questioning. So teenagers, adolescents are usually more liberal than their parents. They may start questioning why the Catholic Church or whatever your church or religion teaches. But they are questioning in order to find out better. Okay, so explain to them. Don't tell them, why are you questioning? What is wrong with you? No. Okay, they are questioning in order to understand. Okay, and the way they may question may not look very respectful, but they are questioning in order to ground it better. And if you simply force it down, then they might grow up practicing religion as a Sunday thing. It's not something that affects their Monday to Saturday. Something that I do on Sunday. So, and because of these, teenagers are easily bored. You go to them for mass, and 10 minutes within the mass, they are bored. So easily bored. If something is not pleasurable immediately, as I've told you, they get easily bored at it. Of course, it's your role as a parent to ensure that they keep their religious observance. It's important, but to also understand that, yeah, they will indicate by their body language that they are bored. That does not mean that they get to do whatever they want. And so as their independence increases, they will start now struggling either to listen to the devil or to the angel. So they start eye rolling to you. They start pushing back on your authority as a parent. And they're no longer easily compliant. They don't simply do whatever you want. They are simply not compliant simply because you're the parent or the teacher. They will question. They will drag their feet when you assert your authority. They'll show you by their body language, I am doing it, but I'm not liking it. And then they tend to want to please their friends. So the peers, close friends, have profound influence. And what that means is there are positives and there are negatives for this. There are pros and cons. The pros is they can have the social skills that are important to have friends, because friends are very, 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 very important across the lifespan. So much so that psychology has found out that the biggest predictor of how long you will live is the quality of your relationship, not even nutrition and all that. You have bad relationship, you are done for. You have no one in your life. Loneliness has been found to kill at almost the same levels as alcohol and tobacco. So much that World Health Organization has considered announcing or making loneliness a disability of the 21st century. Okay. And cigarette alone kills. You know how many people cigarette smoke kills annually, globally? 5.4 million. Okay, wachana na corona inachukua watu a few. I'm not saying it's something to joke around anyway, but I'm saying cigarette smoke kills 5.4 million on average annually. Okay, with all the effect it has on people. So anyway, I was talking about, so it has its cons. So you want your children to develop and to have friends. That's very important. But the other problem is peer pressure. They want to impress their friends so much that they can make very, very stupid decisions. And this is something that many African parents need to know, and Asian parents, that teenagers show reduced responsiveness to severe punishment. The more you make the punishment when they do wrong severe, the more it stops having any effect. Okay, so you want to observe that. So quickly here, traumatic experiences may cause adolescents to view the world as an unjust, unfair place and make them unable to cope. So pay attention to that. Adolescents do what the parents do. What you say may not matter. You know, what you do is what they will observe. So therefore, the best way to support their moral development is by modeling moral character. Parents are particularly important because they are generally the original source of moral guidance, not the teachers. Okay, teachers are, but not the original. Okay, they will listen. They will imitate you more than anybody else. And therefore, authoritative parenting, where the parents are equally demanding and equally supportive. Okay, so parents are very demanding in proper parenting. They demand high levels of moral responsibility. They demand high levels of discipline. They demand high levels of academic performance. They do, but also they give very high levels of support. They say positive words to their kids. You know, they encourage them. They give them a hug. They take them out. You know, they spend time with them. Okay, so when you are criticizing and correcting more than you are complimenting and celebrating their children, there's something wrong. You know, and we are not trained to do that. We are only trained to criticize. What happens when you're adolescent, when you tell your adolescents to do the house chores, and then you come in the evening and they have not done? As a parent, what do? You are angry from here to India, isn't it? Yeah, and you give a lecture of 30-45 minutes. Hey, unataka kuniua, hakuna kitu nataka kufanya, blah. Oh, you go on and on. But what happens when you come home and the child has done what you had asked them to do? What do? Kumbe unaweza fanya kazi ukifikiria. That is your best compliment. Okay, so that means you are very demanding but very low support. Okay, and we grew up like this. We grew up not hearing our parents being positive to us. So especially teenagers, when they do something and see it, the effort. So, and finally, one of the most influential things a parent you can do is to encourage the right kind of peer relationships. And so social development, I'll just mention this quickly because I can see my time is up. Identity versus role confusion. So those of you who have been here when I was talking about middle childhood, I said middle childhood is a place where children are trying to find out whether they should be industrious, and if they are not, they have inferiority complex. Here, adolescence is a stage where they try to find out who they are, who am I, identity, and if they don't find out, they become confused about their role in the world. And so adolescents need to answer 4 important questions. Who am I? Who do I want to be? And what do I want to do? Those are very different questions. What should I believe? That is a question of faith and religion and all that. And where do I fit in? Okay, so where do I fit? Who are my friends? Okay, so assist your child to answer those questions. And when their identity is achieved, then the crisis is more or less resolved.